The minister's sons or daughters who are indulging in corruption, we will be told we can't give you names because name is personal information. The whole controversy around fake voters and wrong deletions that are done to the voter rolls to manipulate elections, they are being targeted. They are being labeled anti-national, urban Naxals. They are being, slapped with false cases. We will not be able to detect or expose any corruption, any wrongdoing, any electoral fraud. Board has the power to impose penalties up to 250 crore rupees in every instance. Countries like Russia or Turkey or North Korea are the kinds of countries that would have laws like this.
Hello, Federal viewers. Welcome to a chat with RTI activist Ms. Anjali Bhardwaj. October 2025 marks the 20th year of RTI Act. In the recent months, people like Anjali have been raising fears that RTI Act is being weakened along with the introduction of Data Personal Digital Protection Act. Let's hear from her more. Hello, Anjali. Welcome.
Good, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah. This year is the 20th year of RTI, and people like you are raising questions that the RTI Act is being weakened in the recent months along with the DPDP Act. Can you explain on that? What is the impact on this amendment?
So the right to information law was brought into the country at a national level in the year 2005. So this year we are celebrating 20 years of the Right to Information Act. It's been one of the most empowering pieces of legislation for the common people in our country because it's empowered them to ask questions, get information from the government, and to hold the government accountable. Recently, in August 2023, the Data Protection Law was brought, through which the RTI law has been amended. It has been weakened. How has the Data Protection Law done that? Basically, Section 44(3) of the Data Protection Law says that any personal information that anybody asks for under the RTI law can no longer be provided. It is exempt. So it amends Section 81J of the RTI Act and says that now onwards, no personal information will be provided under the RTI Act. So what does that mean? If one asks for the name of the contractor who made the road and indulged in corruption, we will be told that that is that person's personal information. Name is a personal information. We will not be given it. If we ask for the name of any government employee because we feel that they are indulging in corruption, any minister, the minister's sons or daughters who are indulging in corruption, we will be told we can't give you names because name is personal information. If people ask for the names of those who have taken large loans from public sector banks and run away, we will be told names is personal information. Even electoral rolls, voter rolls. We've seen, the whole controversy around fake voters and wrong deletions that are done to the voter rolls to manipulate elections. How is that information coming out? It's coming out because there is public access to voter rolls. Now, voter rolls has the names of voters. It has the names and addresses of voters, has their photographs.
So do you mean to say even the Election Commission can say no to any of these data?
Absolutely.
They cannot access the electoral votes?
Once the Data Protection Law comes into effect, it amends the RTI law and sets up this regime. The Election Commission could very well say that we want to comply with the law of the land and therefore say that we will not make this public. So can you imagine the impact that this will have on our electoral democracy? We will not be able to detect or expose any corruption, any wrongdoing, any electoral fraud, and that is why there is a huge opposition to the data protection law now. And we are here in Chennai to talk about how this law has been brought by the bill was brought by the central government. It was made into a law through Parliament when all opposition members had walked out due to the Manipur violence, and at that time just the ruling party members passed this bill and it became a law, and how it's so very dangerous.
But no, I'm just wondering, are we overthinking too much into this, since this DPDP Act is yet to come into operation and it's yet to be operational?
Look, the provisions of the law are very worrisome. It has not been implemented yet because the rules have not been made. But the central government has circulated draft rules, and they have said that they are going to now notify the rules. Once the rules are notified, which is likely to happen this year, the law will become operational. The law amends the RTI Act, but more importantly, the law says that everyone who collects or publishes personal information will be a data fiduciary, and a complaint against a data fiduciary, if they don't take proper consent from people whose information they are collecting, will be lodged in a data protection board, which is in the control of the central government. And the board has the power to impose penalties up to 250 crore rupees in every instance, which can be double to 500 crore rupees.
In that case, journalists like us, we are collecting data. Often we tend to believe on our sources. Sometimes the officials may not give the documents, but they would be willing to give us some details about any document, the amount of money involved, or any important data. So do you think people like us, even journalists, would also be affected by this?
Yes, unfortunately, the Data Protection Act in India, unlike other data protection laws in the world, does not give journalistic exemption, which means journalists are also covered under the law. It's not just NGOs or individuals or companies. Even journalists are covered under this law, which means that if a journalist pulls out any personal data, if they access it through a fact finding or through a survey, or there's some sources that give them that data, unless they ask for consent from the person, they cannot publish it. So imagine that if you get to know that there is some corruption that's happening, in which, let's say, some senior functionaries are involved, some minister or some collector or somebody is involved, you cannot publish that information till you get permission from those people. You get consent from those people. Now, who in their right mind, if they're indulging in corruption and human rights violations, why would they give consent to you to publish their names? So that means that journalism, as we know it, which is meant to expose wrongdoing, to question those in power, is going to finish. And that is a real threat to press freedom in the country as well. But anyone who raises uncomfortable questions, collects data and publishes it that the government does not approve of, the central government, they will be covered under the law, and they can have penalties up to 500 crore rupees on them. So this will cause a chilling effect.
We are living in a democratic country. Can you mention any other countries having such a law?
Well, we don't know of any other countries that have draconian laws like this. People who have looked at the laws of different jurisdictions, for example, the GDPR law has an exemption for journalists. The European GDPR law, which is their data protection law, is considered to be a very, very powerful law. It still exempts journalists. I think only countries like Russia or Turkey or North Korea are the kinds of countries that would have laws like this, which I think really should worry every citizen who cares for democracy in our country, because this law will essentially bring in complete totalitarianism.
We are in the 20th year of RTI, and what would be the future of RTI implementation? What would be the future of using RTI Act with this DPDP?
What we are seeing is that there is a repeated attack on the RTI law, especially in the last 7 to 8 years. Look, the RTI law, unfortunately, there is a huge attack on the RTI law. In the 20th year, we can see how anybody who questions the government, anyone who uses the RTI law, they are being targeted. They are being labeled anti-national, urban Naxals. They are being, slapped with false cases. Even 100 people have even been murdered in our country for filing RTI requests and exposing corruption and wrongdoing. But there are still 60 lakh people every year in the country who use the RTI law. And they are using the RTI law to hold governments accountable. What this amendment to the RTI Act through the data protection law will do is that it will take away a very critical power that people have under the RTI Act to access granular personal information on the basis of which they are able to expose government wrongdoing. So I'll give you an example. There are so many scholarships that are meant for the economically weaker section, or that are meant for SC/ST students, other marginalized communities. Very often what happens is that the wrong kind of people, who are not eligible, get these scholarships, and people who are deserving, who ought to be getting these scholarships, who are actually supposed,
the real
beneficiaries are not getting those scholarships. So people file RTI requests and ask for the names and addresses of the people who are getting the scholarships. And then when they realize that people who are not even eligible are getting, they are able to hold the government accountable and get their right. They get their scholarship. Now imagine if now people are going to be told, after the data protection law comes and the RTI Act is amended, that you can no longer access these lists of who is getting the scholarships, where they live, who are these people, how will they expose this graft, how will they expose the corruption and get their rights. So this is the same thing for rations, for pensions, for scholarships, for midday meals, for getting your, people are filing RTI requests to get all these fundamental rights, basic rights. If you're denied a ration card, or you're denied your driving license or passport, and somebody's asking for a bribe, people ask in an RTI request that give me the name of the official who was supposed to deal with my application. And then they are able to hold them accountable. If you don't have that information on the name, the person who is to be held accountable, then there is no accountability, which means that without scrapping the RTI Act, the government has effectively made it entirely ineffective once this law comes in, the DPDP Act comes in.
And thank you, Anjali. Thanks for your time and your
Thank you.
information.
Thank you.